feel like I'm in the midst of a storm, and one day you're good. One day you're good. You're chilling. Everything is going good. It's like you're rolling with the punches, if you will, right? And then it's another day. It's like every single punch is connected. No matter how much you're bobbing and weaving, no matter how much you're ducking, rolling, it's like every single one of them is hitting.
Mhm.
And I don't know. The feel is like the feel is like how I guess I guess here's the topic. The topic is the calling. The calling. That's the topic. The topic is the calling. And how does one know what you're called to do, and how does one know when he or she is walking in the call, if you will, right? And I feel like that's where I'm at right now. That's the struggle right now. It's like I feel like what I'm doing, I'm not necessarily answering the call. And at the same token, I don't know exactly what is the call. And so it's kind of like a limbo kind of state that I'm in, right? I am not answering the call, but at the same time, I don't know what is the call.
Um, I think that's now you just said that it is kind of like, what is this concept of the calling? Um, I'm imagining it's all connected to when we have our conversation about what purpose is, but the true purpose of people are, the true purpose of man is. Um, in your mind, is the calling a temporary concept, or is that like a thing that resonates within you in terms of who you are, that reflects what the calling could be for your life?
And I think that's at least when I'm reflecting earlier, it's like that's what it is. It's like I'm not sure if I'm going to answer your question, but you kind of spark something. It's like, okay, um, it's almost like sometimes I'm looking for someone to say, "Hey, Jimmy, you're very good at this. This
Mhm.
is your calling," you know. And I'm like, "Oh yeah," and I could go and explore it. But at the same token, I know that no one could tell me what my calling is, but I don't know how to figure out what is my calling, right? And I guess the thing that came to mind in that reflection was that I heard somewhere that someone said the thing that you do best, the thing that you do so effortlessly, the thing that you do so good that you don't even know that you're doing it well is the thing that you're meant to do. And it's like, but if I don't know that I'm doing it, how the hell I'm supposed to know that that's the thing that I'm meant to do? You understand what I'm saying? So I don't really know how does one figure out the calling, and I don't know if it's a temporary thing or it's a long term thing. Like those who know that I was born to do this, like how the hell they know they were born to do it, and how am I struggling to figure out what the hell I was born to do? You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, but you mentioned somebody can't tell you, maybe not directly, or maybe people have definitely have their own thoughts of this is what you should do. But I know in the course of my life, uh, the Most High sent people to as like a confirmation of something I probably was already thinking or doing or in the act of being. That I think, and of course, people want to say, "Hey, you should do this," or like you said, "You should do this," and you should be this. And yeah, you gotta really, it has to really resonate in terms of where you see yourself and where the spirit is leading you. But the Most High can use people to either be a reminder of or a confirmation of what it is you're thinking already. I know for me, 17 years old, one of the first things that when I was standing on my college campus, and I know it had to be the spirit, even if I didn't necessarily know at that time what that meant. But a clear concept came in my head that you're an educator. You're going to be a teacher, and overall, you're an educator. And I was like, wow. had no inkling I was going to be a teacher. Had no inkling what that meant. And I was there as part of like a mentoring program, but the spirit hit me, and it's been many times that concept of myself has been confirmed. Even while I was teaching, like, hey, boom, that this is who you are. And now that I'm not teaching right now or at the moment, I still feel that part of me that, there's an educator inside me. And both the educator or teacher is not necessarily me teaching and saying this is, and leading instruction, but also a desire and willingness to learn on both things. So it's like certain people, certain events, certain situations come up that kind of lead you to where you probably either already knew or lead you to things you wasn't thinking about, but you were already doing. And that's the tricky part. It's like the calling probably is something we've all been enacting and doing, but we just didn't know how it would manifest in terms of whether it be a career path or a life journey or life goal. So, yeah, that whole concept of the call, where does it come from? How does it manifest itself? How do you begin to know? I think it's already in us.
I think I agree that it might be in us, but I think also it's how do we navigate the call, right? The divine call and how it manifests in the world, right? Because like you, I had that inclination at a young age that I was called meant to be an educator, right? However, when I got into the profession of teaching, it's not what I had in mind, right? So I answer the call of being a teacher, but how the world kind of like, and I hope I'm not making excuses here, but how the world kind of lay out how teaching is supposed to be done, it didn't jive with my soul, right? And so it's like, how does one navigate that, right? How do you navigate what is it that you're called, what is it that you feel you're called to do, and how it plays out in the world?
Oh no, I definitely agree with that. But it's deep that you said that. You said I answered the call, and I answered the call, and it didn't vibe with what the world was saying, and that's deep. But that still doesn't necessarily mean who you are and who you are meant to be is going to automatically vibe with what you're doing at any given point. Because I'm learning somewhat, I'm still learning this concept in terms of the call, and now we're going to, just thinking about this new term, the assignment. So the assignment could be a temporary thing, but the calling, it can manifest itself in different ways. You know what I mean? So you're correct. At any given point in life, it just might be the assignment might be over, but the call in terms of what you're supposed to do and who you are, it just manifests itself in a different way. But that calling of who you are and who I am and who we all, internally, it just kind of like manifests itself in different ways. Like if you're a great orator, or if you're a great planner, if you work with your hands, you might do different things, but also going to tap back into, hey, what are you best at? What are you good at? What's something that, like you say, comes naturally? You do the concept of something that it's just a joyous thing that you do in all situations. That it just kind of like just automatically comes out, no matter what the situation is. Um, so that's when I'm starting to learn about myself, no matter what I happen to be doing. Um, the educator part of me might come out in terms of me learning about business and seeking to do businesses. Educator might come out of me in terms of dealing with young people outside the classroom or people in general. But like I said, the educator part of me is also the concept of not just saying, hey, this is what you need to do, but me also seeking to take it in and learning. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like a flow. So yeah, that's how I'm looking at it in terms of the calling. Whatever the calling is, it's not necessarily what we're doing at any given time. It's who it is that we are inside that reflects in whatever we happen to be doing.
And I guess the struggle for me right now, and I wonder how many other men are in this situation, right? Um, it's trying to navigate who you are in the world, right? Capitalism have this notion that you take your talent and you sell it to make a living in the world, right? And I remember it's like a lot of thoughts going through my head right now. I remember hearing Cornel West, and he talks about vocation versus profession, right? And vocation is the calling, right? What one is naturally called to do by the divine, and the profession might be what one does for a living, right? And I think sometimes, at least where I'm at, is trying to find a way to merge those two, and I'm not sure if they always fit
Mm,
together,
mm,
right? How does one vocation fit with one's profession? Can they be separate? Should they be separate?
mm,
Um, and I feel like that's my struggle right now. It's like I'm trying to figure out, or maybe I have figured out my calling, right?
mm.
But my vocation and the way it manifests in terms of the profession is the conflict, right?
Okay. Okay.
That's the conflict. So it's like, okay, how do I be true to my calling and at the same time continue to make a living in which I could care for myself and my family, right? Um, and that's where it becomes a little difficult to navigate sometimes,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Difficult in terms of challenging, not difficult in terms of impossible. Correct.
Exactly. But you know what you said it a few times in this conversation, like the calling is kind of like who you are, and I'm wondering if like the ultimate calling is to figure out who you are,
Mm,
right? Figure out who you are and how to navigate the world in which you're in, right? And I wonder if that's where I'm currently at, right? Trying to figure out who I am and how to navigate the world in which I live, right?
mm,
Because sometimes it's challenging. It's challenging to play the role that you're called to play in the world,
mm.
and at the same time try to figure out who you are.
You just saying that in terms of like that balance and trying to figure out who you are, and like you said, Dr. West, Dr. Cornell West, in terms of you said vocation and profession, personal note, and then bringing it to like a historical biblical note. Personal note, I remember a couple of times in my life, particularly one time when it was a security guard that told me, "Hey, I feel like you're going to be a preacher." I'm like, that ain't what? I'm like, nah. Only maybe because of my notions of preachers and this and that and the third. But then I've had students and colleagues, and they didn't mean it as a diss because I never wanted to preach to somebody. They say in terms of my style, particularly if we get into certain conversations, it's like, oh man, you coming off not like a preacher in terms of like you're telling us what to do or you trying to be, all moralistic. But he said, hey, your style, your flow is like a preacher. I'm like, whoa. Oh, and then also in terms of like the Christ, the Messiah, that at least in the Greek, people have come to know and say Jesus. Now that you said that, we all know his purpose, or we think we know, um, and we see kind of like the calling, but his profession was a carpenter, and it's crazy. And I've never been a carpenter. I'm not good with hands. Maybe you with my hands in terms of that notion, but they build to my notion, right? They bring different things together and they build and create like a structure out of an idea or thought. And some of them don't even need like the instructions. Like you say, hey, this is what I need. They go back and then the idea, the thought to build up from like a nothingness into this grand creation happens. And then we're talking about the calling concept. And it's like, wow. So here it is, the Christ, who was a carpenter by trade, literally was in this concept of building. You know what I mean? Building people up, breaking them down, and then building them back up into this new grand creation within themselves. It's so it just that thought paralleled to me in terms of like I feel and I think it's alone in existence. And I don't mean feel like happy, sad. I mean feel like in a spirit type way. And then also thinking about it, just analyzing life, my life, and others. It's like once you truly like do how to like are naturally, if you want to, if you say instinctually living in a calling, it kind of merges into whatever it is you're doing to the point where I think you said in the beginning, it's like, wait a minute, it's like a merge, and maybe I am doing it, even though I might not, you know, the activity I'm doing might be temporary, and I might have to move on to something else. Whatever it is I'm doing, somehow this calling that's instinctual in me, or that I might even figured out, somehow comes out, and it manifests itself to those around me.
You know, you said something interesting when you brought up Jesus. Like his profession was a carpenter, his calling was a rabbi. Rabbi meaning teacher. His profession, his calling was a teacher, right, to spread the gospel,
Yes.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but at least in the gospel, the four books written about his life, we never saw him as a carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
We only heard that he was a carpenter,
Mm-hmm.
right? But we never heard him engage. At least I've never came across anything that said that he went and built this house or
Mm-hmm.
this building. You know what I mean? When we were introduced to him, at 12, he was learning with teachers and doctors.
Yes.
When we saw him at 30, he's being baptized and beginning his ministry
Yes.
where he's teaching, right? But never did I see him or heard of him being engaged in this profession. And I don't know, a thought kind of hit me. Is it that we are worried in this capitalistic system as men, we are worried too much about our profession, where we should be concerned more so with our vocation, right? Our calling. And that our calling will lead, like it's a lot of capitalists that say this too, right? Figure out what is it that you're good at and the money will come,
Yes.
right? Um, but you know, when in the school system, and the notion amongst the working class people is go get a good paying job, go find out what you know what profession is good for you, what profession is going to make you the most money, right. And it's like maybe that's the wrong message, and maybe that's what I'm doing in a sense, right, trying to um trying to figure out more so my profession than it is about my calling, because we have been we have been we have been programmed to believe that, yeah, you need your bread,
Yes.
bread, 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 and I can't live without my bread. So to the point to where I feed myself only bread. I'm living by bread alone.
That's right. Mm.
Um, but at the same token, it sounds good saying that, but realistically speaking, a man that has bills, has family to provide for, right, and kids to take care of, can he dwell only on the vocation in hopes that it will provide for him, or does he really have to find a way to navigate those two things, right? In that, yeah, man shall not live by bread alone doesn't mean that man doesn't need bread, right? He still need bread, but how do you manage it? Can I just be like, hey, forget about the money right now, I'm going to focus on figuring out what is it that I'm called to do, and the money will come. But then how do I provide, or how do I take care, or how do I play my part in making sure that I obtain my daily bread?
And that's a great question, because then with that question, and I see it since I made this move to where I'm at now, and other parts of my life, the times where I was at that concept, and it comes up, you know, every so often we're in this flesh of what do I do next? If I'm thinking in a worldly plane, then the number one thing is what do I have to do, like you said, to get this bread, this cheese, you know what I mean? All the uh, the slang terms or colloquial expressions we use to say money, or we say, hey, or actual food, like how I pay my rent, how I keep the shelter, how I feed my family. Um, but if but the times that I've been able to switch on and choose a spiritual mindset in terms of Lord, if I'm doing I'm having to do based on what it is I feel like you having me do, Lord, take care of it. And in those moments when I release that from myself, because if I'm in the belief that um, what is it, his burden is what is it? His burden is easy and his yoke is light. Then if I take that pressure off myself, the Most High will take care of it in terms of ideas, thoughts, people, situations, and even money that comes out the blue off my radar that I wasn't even thinking about. That's going to get me through either the next day or the next month and continue to allow me opportunity to keep pushing forward until such time, whether it's something I have to do in terms of my obedience and faithfulness, and or something that the Most High is working on that's going to give this super duper bounty. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's I think that's the number one thing. It's kind of like um, either us thinking about and taking it on ourselves in terms of what worldly thing do I have to do, even if the Most High is not in accordance with it, as opposed to I'm going to do what I got to do. Lord bless it, um, and continue to add to the ideas, thoughts, to the vision that you have within me, based on the calling that I have and whatever the assignment is. I'm just going to do it in faith. If you know what I mean, I'm seeing in the various ways that you allow me to see it via the spirit that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I mean, yeah,
It,
that's
hearing
right now.
in hearing you speak, I guess and this is the hard part. I would assume for me, and not assume. This is the hard part, or the challenging part rather, for me, and I would assume for a lot of other people, right? And I guess as I try to grow, not try, as I grow in faith, it's what I'm hearing is two things: lean not on thy own understanding, and trust,
Yes,
right? And I think Paul talked about it when he was mentioning faith. Like faith is it entails trust, trusting that one, God is real, and two, that He will do what is it that one go to Him seeking in faith, right? And I think what we have learned, or what I have learned, speaking for myself, is more so how to trust the five senses and what the world shows me to be real. And it's kind of battling that in terms of like exactly what you said. If I go, if I take up my calling, deny myself, pick up my cross, and follow, then all the things that I feel I have to tend to in the world will be taken care of, right? Maybe not in the way that I would want for it to be tended to. Maybe not in the way I was told it must be tended to, but it will be tended to. You know what I mean? It will be tended to. Um, and then it's like, how do I and how do others who are listening begin to build that trust and to cast a burden on the Lord so that you're leaning not on your understanding, but trusting that He will provide, right? Jehovah Jireh, He will take care of your daily needs. It's like what Christ said, right? Don't worry about what you're gonna eat today or what clothes to put on the body, right? Um, your needs will be met. The Heavenly Father already knows your needs, but the struggle is it is to cast off the mindset of the world, right? It is the struggle is to not to be off the world. And I think that's what I am trying to do right now is to deprogram myself from being off the world, to be in the world, but not off the world.
join the conversation by sharing your thoughts in the comments.
Be well and be blessed.